Welcome to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women that replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women in the United States, according to the CDC and NIH. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, or stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, and hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. Freeman, and you'll hear me interview other sisters in loss from around the world who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Storytelling is powerful. Storytelling is activism. Storytelling is healing. Now let's get started. Welcome to the Sisters in Loss podcast. This is your girl, Erica Michelle, back with another solo episode. This episode is audio only because, child, I was not putting on anything, but if you could picture me in my bonnet and my pajamas, that's what this is. I have waited and intended to start the year off with this episode. However, really, January has been a blur. I don't know about you, but it has been a blur. And I want this year to be fruitful. So I said, you know what? We're going to replay some of the old episodes that I started off the year for the last 5 years, since 2018 going into 2019. So that's what we did for January. So press pause here and go back and listen to some of those episodes. I think that you would be fully blessed and immersed to see the growth, the progress of Sisters in Loss as an organization, but also as me individually, as so much has changed over these last 5 years with the business, but also in my personal life. And we are going into year 8, which means new beginnings for my numerology people, my spiritual folks. And I'm excited to talk about how Sisters in Loss is going to be fruitful in 2025. So this episode is for you to listen to. You want to hear more about what we're doing to stay grounded and fruitful, and planting and sowing seeds so that they can multiply and manifest in 2025. So to begin this episode, I would love to just really talk about January as a whole. I ended the year and started the new year on the continent of Africa, in Accra, Ghana. I spent Dete December in Accra, and did venture to Cape Coast, Amina, and then came back to Accra. And we did go to Aqua Safari, which also is about 2 hours away from Accra, for a day right before we flew back to the United States. I did go with a travel group, as I typically do travel only with travel groups, mainly just because it's easier to travel solo with travel groups. I'm not a solo traveler where I'm going to go completely somewhere solo by myself. It is a goal of mine, but I am a solo traveler who will travel to the location by myself, meet up with other people that I may not know, and travel, have an itinerary of things that we're doing together as a group for, the 5 to 7 days we are at a location. So I do travel with lots of groups. Last year, I had the privilege of traveling with Haitian Nomad, Worst Behavior Tour, and Roman Republic. And I would say out of all of those travel groups, they all focus and factor on different clientele. So if you want a more higher end luxury experience, I would say you would need to travel with a Haitian Nomad. We went to Cote d'Ivoire, to the Ivory Coast. We went to Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. and a couple other locations while we were in the Ivory Coast with Haitian Nomad for the 6 days we were there. Amazing time, luxury experience, 5 star. We'll continue to travel with Haitian Nomad as they travel not only all over the world, but they particularly are one of the travel groups that I know, the only travel groups that I know that really focus on the continent of Africa, and that's outside of your typical normal places that people go that are more accessible, like Ghana is, like Senegal is, like Egypt is. They go other places like Mauritius and Cape Verde and Tunisia, Tunis. Like what? They're going to Ethiopia this year, so lots of travel with Haitian Nomad. So a mid level group would be Worst Behavior Tour. I travel the most with them mainly because I enjoy. I made a lot of friends in that travel group, and it's easier to travel with the travel group when you know people in the group. So you typically go back to that group that you travel with all the time. Last year in 2024, I went to Bora Bora with the travel group. The year prior, I went to Japan with that travel group, and Amsterdam. So this year with this travel group, I've already signed up to go to St. Thomas Carnival, and I'm going to Italy, Rome, Florence, Amalfi Coast, and I probably will tag on London and Milan on that trip this summer. So definitely amazing travel group. With Haitian Nomad, I think I am going to go to Senegal this year with them in November, and then they already put out their 2026 schedule. And I'm already looking at like, okay, how am I going to fit India Holly on this schedule? I want to go to the largest country, people populated in the world. So that is to what is to come as far as traveling is concerned. And then more of a, I would say not a mid, it's still just as much as any of the other travel groups, but a travel group that you want to have fun, that you want to turn up is Roman Republic. That's who we went to Ghana with. It was a turn up. These people don't sleep. They literally will be out until 8 in the morning, go eat, sleep a couple hours, and they're back up to go out and have a great day. So it's just different experiences with different travel groups. I enjoy them all for different reasons. But being back in Accra for Dirty December, going into the new year, and then opening and welcoming the new year on the continent was a dream come true. To put my feet in the sand and in the soil and really recognize God's goodness and God's greatness as we're entering 2025. It'll be 5 years since the start of COVID. And even looking back over this last month of January, all of my memories that came up were memories of sickness and sadness from my son Maxwell, as this time of year since he was born was typically the time of year that he would be, vastly ill, and we would be in the hospital on oxygen support or in the ICU. He's literally fighting for his life. And to see this last month of him, we're going into year 2 where we haven't had any major hospitalizations, is a testament to God's favor over his life, but just a testament to how healthy he is right now. And I'm grateful for that because um, it was never like that. And I've always felt in my journey to motherhood that I've always been going from crisis to crisis to crisis. And I've never had time to just sit back and reflect and feel the goodness of what it means to be a mom in this season. And having that opportunity to really reflect on this last year and a half, really this last year since he's been living with his dad, but also just because he's been healthy, has been great for my mental health, because now I understand the goodness of what it feels like to parent, especially since my parenthood journey is different from most who have lost babies, who have battled infertility, and to go on to have kids. Having a child with special needs and a disability is a unique position to be in after such a journey to becoming a mom. So I don't want to normalize it and say that this is this is normal, because my journey is always going to be a little different from yours, especially if you have typical children. but I just want to acknowledge where I am and the goodness and the um, gratefulness that I have experienced of not feeling like my faith is shattered again because I'm dealing with another, human issue, another physical issue from a health challenge that my son has or has had. He has had other challenges, but definitely nothing around respiratory, around his lungs, around any of his other issues, pulmonary, asthmatic issues. And I count that a blessing and I count that joy. And that is nothing but God, nothing but God's grace in his hands that are on my son's life and has reassured me in my journey as a mom. So, since January the 20th, which we celebrated MLK Day, and someone that we remain nameless was um, reelected, the convicted felon, fascist, turned now dictator, was reelected to the highest land position in these United States. Life has been crazy for the last 12 or 13 days. It has been chaotic. It has been lots of confusion. It has been a journey. But as the 92% delegation, I know y'all are a part of it out there, Sisters in Loss community, we can't rest. I mean, we have to rest. We can't be silent in this, but we have to rest. We can't allow the chaos, the confusion, the batter that is going on in the news cycle or in social media to steer us off our goals for 2025. It's the reason why I did not record a new episode in January. I said, oh, I'm just going to take this time to really bask in the greatness of this travel experience I just had. And I'm going to just really be on the lookout of how am I going to be fruitful in 2025 and ease into 2025 without feeling the burden of having to say something at every different turn. So that really has been my last 2 or 3 years, especially transitioning the business, moving to the DC area. All of those things I have wanted to make sure that I'm doing it with intention, no different than this podcast. So as this January has been tumultuous, because that's really what it's been, I hope that you all are remaining steady, that you're staying grounded, that you are not allowing the news and the potential news and executive orders that are coming down from Washington, D.C., deter you from your journey to become a mom, your journey as a mom or a parent, and your journey through fertility. Like, do not let these people stir your emotions, get your blood pressure high, and stress you out. Sis, sit down. We need to rest. We need to find joy. Something that has brought me joy over the last 4 weeks is rewatching shows that I have not rewatched in a while. I rewatched the entire series of Scandal, all 7 seasons. I rewatched the entire series of Queen Sugar, all 7 seasons. And I rewatched Being Mary Jane, those 5 seasons or 4 seasons. And the fifth season was basically like an hour-and-a-half movie. If you all recall, they did finally give us closure to that. And then I'm catching up on all the Joy TV. There's a great show on Hulu called Paradise with Sterling K. Brown. Go watch. Another great show, Watson with Morris Chestnut. Another show, go watch. And Harlem. Harlem is back on Amazon Prime. It's probably the only time that I'm going to keep Amazon Prime for another 2 or 3 months, so I can rewatch Harlem a couple times before I get rid of Amazon altogether, which is a whole nother separate topic that I won't go into on this podcast. But I'm sure you've seen all the initiatives that are rolling out around those who think diversity, equity, and inclusion is a way of targeting certain individuals, but really a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion. As you hear, I'm not calling it DEI initiatives are made for everybody. It's made for women. It's made for people with disabilities. It's not just made for folks who are Black and brown. But I digress because we know that we've been
Thank
on
you
this
for
fight
listening to
forever. And like,
today's
we literally built
episode.
this country
For
for
show
free.
notes, go to
And that we
sistersinloss.com
stand on the
to stay
shoulders of
connected with
giants,
us
of
and join the Sisters in Loss
individuals who have not
community
only
and
championed for our
receive
civil
my
rights,
weekly
but for
newsletter.
health equity, for
Please go to
reproductive rights and justice, for birth
sistersinloss.com
equity.
forward slash
And
newsletter. That is
as Black women who
sistersinloss.com
are
forward slash
birthing, who
newsletter.
have had
Please
children,
rate and
who
review this
continue to
episode,
want
and
to
I will
grow their
talk to you next
families,
week.
it is our job to remain resilient, to be informed about what's going on, but not to be consumed with what's going on, if you know what I mean. So whatever you need to do, sis, to protect your peace in this season, I need you to do so. Delete that app off your phone, mute those individuals, or unfollow those social media accounts, and create your timeline so it is filled with Black joy. Because what we are not going to do is allow every clickbait situation deter us from our goals. We want to be fruitful in 2025, sis. Like, we want to thrive in 2025, sis. We want to continue to go after the things that God has destined, determined, and deemed ours in 2025. So do not allow this chaos and confusion that's happening in Washington, D.C., because I can tell you for a fact, since all of the things that have happened over these last 12 days, there has been a shift in energy in the Capitol. I've been in D.C. plenty of times since January 20th. Actually, I drove through D.C. on January 20th just to prove a point to myself that there was not a lot of people that were out, which was very true. But don't let it deter you from what you have planned, what God has called you to do in this season. You got to continue to press, sis. You have to continue to press toward the mark, to claim that prize, because God has called you higher. God has called you to be fruitful. All those seeds that you've planted, that you sowed, that you've watered, it's that season for it to blossom. I hope that you're hearing me clearly. It is that season for them to blossom. So if you need to have tunnel vision, sis, that is okay. Keep your tunnel vision. Keep your eyes on that prize. Press towards it, and know that you got a community behind you rooting for you. Like, you gonna go after it. You gonna get it. But don't let these people deter you from it. Don't let them let you come out of your character. Stay true to who you are and grounded in whose you are, because we know who you are and who orders your steps every single day. I think in this season for me, in this season for Sisters in Loss, I think you'll start to see a lot of transition to doing a lot of proactive things when it comes to health equity and reproductive rights and justice. So that means a lot more policy work, a lot of more things that we can do on the front end to ensure that Black women and birthing people aren't going through pregnancy loss and miscarriage, and have more informed rights of their bodies with testing and things. Um, um, Compared to a lot of the reactive work that I do, which is a lot of grief support groups, doing this podcast, sharing stories, which are still my form of activism and advocacy. So we'll still continue to share those stories, but there's so many things that we can do proactively in ensuring that our needs, wants, desires are not only respected, valued, and heard in these birthing spaces, in these doctor offices, in the emergency room, in these clinics that we go to, but also that our rights are not continually to get stripped at the state level. So that means for us as informed parties, we are going to stay informed, but we are not going to be consumed with everything that has happened in the news. I'm going to keep saying that throughout my little rant here on this podcast, because there is no way that you are going to continue to move forward if you are consumed and overwhelmed by every piece of news that comes your way. I'm not saying that you can't be informed. There's so many ways to stay informed. There's so many podcasts that are out there that are going to keep you informed. So I don't know what you're subscribed to. Some of my favorite podcasts that I love and I listen to on a weekly, daily notion are the Daily Podcast. It's a New York Times podcast. I also listen to Native Land Podcast. That is a great podcast I always listen to. I listen to Brown Ambition podcast, even with the transition from Tiffany, Alicia, the Budgetnista leaving, and Mandy Woodruff taking over. She's bringing in people to really talk about where we are in the world and more current events. And I love the new style of the podcast. So Brown Ambition is still one that I listen to on a weekly basis. I still listen to Farnoosh Torabi's So Money podcast. I think that that's a great podcast to ground you, to really understand what's happening from a global perspective. Still listening to Therapy for Black Girls. I also still listen to on a weekly basis Joy Reid, Joy Ann Reid also has a podcast that focuses on her show. So for those who may not watch MSNBC on a daily basis, you can listen to the readout the next day. That's how I support Joanne, because I don't always turn my TV on to watch MSNBC every day, but I do download her podcast. It's my way of listening to her. But if you don't want to listen to her on the podcast, on her readout show, she actually has another podcast with Jackie Reed. If you remember Jackie Reed from BET days, I'm aging myself a little bit. She used to be on BET News. Her and Jackie Reed have a podcast that they've been doing for years. They stopped for a period of time and they just restarted back. And it's still excellent because they are just excellent journalists. It's called Read This, Read That. That is one of my other favorite political podcasts that I always listen to. So I'm giving you some financial and politic podcasts to really think about following behind and that are doing a lot more current events. They are still podcasts like Therapy for Black Girls that are still rooted in the main mission and vision of their show to really talk about and highlight therapists and things of that nature. Same thing with like my Leaks podcast, very much still focused on women's empowerment and making sure that you have a place to go. And just a podcast just to listen to that is hilarious is Getting Grown. You know, my sisters, Takia, Takia and Jade, they are hilarious. You know, praise the Lord, niggas. They're hilarious. So another great podcast. I was never of the Read listener, but a lot of those listeners are the same from the Read who listen to that, do listen to Getting Grown. My favorite spiritual podcast right now, I always listen to Truth's Table. Those are my girls. I've been on their podcast and a few times and have been asked a few times to get on that podcast. I wouldn't call Here's the Thing a spiritual podcast, but I will say that, you know, Kevin and Angel are very grounded in their spirituality and their faith. So it's another hilarious podcast to get your mind off of the day. And I do listen to Deeply Well by Debbie Brown, as well as Redefining Wealth with Patrice Washington. So these are all podcasts that are just in my lineup outside of my own podcast. I love listening to podcasts. It's one of my favorite things to do. But it's a way of me not only disconnected from the world, but still staying informed and not consumed with the changing headlines every hour, the new executive orders that are written. These first 100 days of this new administration is going to make a lot of people mad and angry, and it's going to impact us financially in ways that we probably have yet to figure out. So I'm encouraging you all to stay informed, don't be consumed, but ensure that you know what's happening and how to adjust accordingly based on your needs, based on your goals, and the dreams and desires in 2025. Some books that I'm loving, that I'm reading currently. Actually, another podcast that I listen to is Ratchet and Respectable, another funny podcast. It's another current event podcast to kind of stay up what's going on. But Demetria is doing this unofficial book club with a book called King, which is based on the life of, you know, Martin Luther, Martin Luther the King, Martin Luther King Jr. And it's fascinating. I'm already 100 pages into this book, listening to it. I'm doing it on Audible, and I have enjoyed listening to it as I drive and go different places. So King is what's on my list this year. Um, the guys from Earn Your Leisure, which is another financial podcast that I'm putting out there. Y'all are getting all the gems. These people are not paying me to give you all this free publicity, but they also have a book that just came out called You Deserve to Be Rich. I think it hit the New York Times bestseller list. Congratulations, guys. I've been re-listening to Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower. If you all know anything about that book was written in like 1993, I believe, or maybe 1983. And I want to say it is set in 2024, going into 2025. Amazing book. If you all are into spirituality and prophecy, to listen to on Audible. And then all of the other books I've read, I've finally finished all my Kennedy Ryan books. So I'm looking forward to the new books that come her way this year. Um, but those are the books that are on my list as of right now. I'm sure there's plenty more that are coming outside of me writing the current book that I'm writing, and finishing up what that looks like. So excited about all of the different things that are coming in 2025 for Sisters in Loss. But like I said, we're going to stay informed. We're not going to be consumed with what's happening. But podcasts and books help get me out of trying to understand trying to be connected in that way. Another thing that we can do in that regard is to actually get a hard copy book once it starts to warm up, to actually physically go outside. For me, going outside means physically going to the gym, going for a walk, to actually get out of this normal mundane news cycle that's going to continue to happen to us, no different than it did, 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, especially as we were coming out of 2018, 2019 into 2020, going into COVID. And what COVID happened, I mean, this is almost 8 years ago now, but you know what I mean. Like, we cannot be consumed by all this craziness. It's going to drive us crazy. And I think that is the intention, is to distract us from really what's happening. Some crazy things are happening. So as you see some of your favorite influencers or politicos or whoever posts on social media about call to actions and things that you all can be doing, definitely get involved. But don't let it consume you to the point where you're stressing about everything, especially we don't need any added stressors. Being Black and being woman is enough. Those are enough stressors that we already have. We don't need added stress to our lives, especially as we are going after our goals, trying fertility treatments, continuing to trying to conceive, continuing our journey to motherhood, trying to grow our families, trying to parent. Like, sis, we got enough going on, and still trying to take care of home, trying to look good, trying to eat healthy, trying to keep our edges. Girl, we got too much. We got too much going on to be distracted by this administration and what it's doing. We have to continue to do the work. So, some things that I know that's coming up on the horizon of Sisters in Loss this year. We're going to do a lot more meetups in the area. We're going to do a lot more community events, a lot of smaller events. I had the intention at the end of last year when I was planning out 2025 to do something larger in 2025. I just don't want to be honest with you all. I think that having smaller events for people to connect is a better way to do something. And then maybe in 2026, as a part of launching Sisters in Loss, launching this book, that would be a bigger event that we do to help book launch the event, but really bring in thought leaders, advocates, activists, storytellers to really talk about the power of sharing your story and what healing looks like, as we are all on this healing journey. So I'm grateful for community. I'm grateful for you all. We still are partnering with Postpartum Support International, and we still have a weekly grief support group on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. I would love for you all to continue to support this podcast by leaving us a fresh new review for 2025. Tell people what you love about the podcast and why you keep coming back to listening to old episodes, especially old episodes that resonate with you all. That would be grateful to hear from. And I love you all for listening. Remember to continue to stay informed, but not consumed. We are thriving in 2025, y'all. We are going to be fruitful in 2025, and we will not let the opposition, we're going to call them the ops, to distract us from all that God has called and created us to do this year. I love you all. Thank you all for listening. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, um, all of the things. And I will talk to y'all soon. Have a blessed 2025. Love you. Bye.